polygamy was always something that I tried not to think about because thinking about it just made me sad.
What has the church taught you about how many wives Joseph Smith married while he was alive? We're not talking about people sealed to him after he died. What has the church taught you, and what did it teach you before you became a missionary or while you were becoming a missionary in terms of how many wives Joseph Smith had?
Nothing. I mean, I know he had multiple wives. I knew polygamy was a thing, but I didn't know anything about any of the people's wives or how many or.
So like, let's just say you're imagining Joseph Smith in Nauvoo. He's mayor of Nauvoo. He's prophet for the church. He's head of the Nauvoo Legion. How many wives are you imagining him having in Nauvoo? What's your guess?
I would guess like 4 or 5.
4 or 5? 4 or 5?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
And
4 or 5 wives, maybe?
When you were on your mission,
I just didn't like to think about it, honestly. Polygamy was always something that I tried not to think about because thinking about it just made me sad.
So like when you're teaching your investigators about Joseph Smith and the first vision and receiving the Aaronic and the Melchizedek priesthood, how many wives did you tell your investigators that Joseph Smith had?
We didn't talk about it.
You didn't?
We didn't talk about polygamy. I mean, if they brought it up, it was like, yeah, polygamy was practiced in the church and it's something that we no longer practice anymore. And I feel like...
But you wouldn't have brought it up, right?
No.
So nowhere in your 6 discussions?
I don't remember. It's been 10 years.
Okay. Let's just say there were 6.
Yeah.
Did the church ever have you proactively teach
polygamy
the investigators about the church's practice of polygamy?
No.
Okay.
No.
So she said 4 or 5. Kara, do you want to do the reveal?
Yeah. So not only did Joseph Smith secretly marry between 30 and 40 women, but he also lied to his own church, many of his top leaders, to the general public, and to his own wife, Emma, about his secret polygamy. In fact, even though Joseph's polygamy revelation stipulates that the first wife must approve all subsequent wives, aka Law of Sarah, Emma was sealed to Joseph after 20 plus other women were already sealed to him, all without her knowledge. Given Emma's angry reaction while discovering Joseph's affair with 16-year-old live-in servant in the barn, it's understandable why Joseph would keep his first 20-plus marriages from his wife.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So, Eve, let's just start. 30 to 40 living women in Nauvoo married to Joseph Smith. What, did you know that?
Well, no. I mean, I had an idea the number was higher, but that's insane.
30 to 40?
That's crazy. Yeah. Where I can ask questions. Like I have questions. Were they already married? Was he having sex with all these women? Like where, and he was doing this secretly. Like, how do we know if he was doing it secretly? Is it like from his journals or their journals or? Yeah, I mean, obviously all those are questions. Good questions. I don't know where this information even comes from.
Yeah.
So. Where does this information come from, Kara?
LDS Church History of the Church, Volume 6, Chapter 9. We have Joseph Smith denying it in some ways, where this is what we mean by secretly and lying to the public. He'll say things like, what a thing it is for a man to be accused of committing adultery and having 7 wives when I can only find 1. Things like that, where he was publicly denouncing it, but privately marrying these women in secret ceremonies, and a lot of the other top leaders of the church, also them being able to marry other women, and then the scariest ones come to have to do with underage girls, especially ones that were living in his home, being his live-in servant, and just all of the implications with different power structures, being the prophet, really always made me uncomfortable. And rightly so. It's hard to investigate these things because it's hard to know the answers of, well, was he sleeping with them? Were they just sealed? But we have a lot of sources that tell us that he was having sex with many of them, and that was an intention from the beginning of it, that abortion was an available practice in Nauvoo, surprisingly. And that he also was sending men from the church on missions to go teach in foreign countries, and then while they were gone, committing a thing called polyandry, which is now marrying that man's wife and sealing her to himself
Without them knowing?
without their knowledge.
Okay, so you said in the book he said he only had one wife. So where do you get all the information about all the other people?
What was weird was that the Doctrine and Covenants at the time, the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants, actually, in I believe it's section 101, it prohibited polygamy. So it basically said the church's stance, this has been removed from the current Doctrine and Covenants, but the Doctrine and Covenants at the time said the church, believes that one man should have one wife, and that's it. So number one, the scriptures, along with the Book of Mormon, prohibited polygamy. Joseph was secretly practicing it. He was having sex with those wives because later the reorganized church was denying that Joseph ever practiced polygamy. And so the Utah Salt Lake City Mormon Church had Joseph's former wives called in to provide sworn affidavits, and Joseph's former wives signed sworn affidavits that they were married to Joseph in very deed. You probably know what that means. And so he definitely had sex with many, if not most, if not all of these plural wives. The church now acknowledges in the Gospel Topics essay, they give this number between 30 and 40. That's the church's number now. As far as Emma not knowing about it, it's widely acknowledged by believing Mormon scholars that Emma was about the 22nd wife sealed to Joseph. So
If my husband does that to me,
if he
Right?
secretly marries 22,
I'm gone. Okay, Casey?
if he secretly marries 22
Right.
women before, also he married these 22 women before Emma, before he received D&C 132. So eventually he receives D&C 132, which is the polygamy revelation. He doesn't receive that until after Emma freaks out, is super mad about the 22 wives. And then he goes to Hiram and says, man, Emma's really mad. We got to get a revelation. So then he goes to God and dictates D&C 132 to Hiram after he's already married 22 other women. So you'd think the revelation would come
Yeah.
before the 22 marriages, not after.
Yeah. So the information about all the other women you're saying is coming from the sworn affidavits of
That
the
Joseph had.
testimonies of the women.
And their journals. There's a really good book called In Sacred Loneliness by Todd Compton, where he gives the history of in each chapter is one of Joseph's 30 whatever wives. So
it's like from public records.
so
it's
it's
from
their
like
journals.
church history.
It's so the personal journals of the wives of Joseph Smith, along with church documents and these sworn affidavits that the church wanted made public because there was a succession crisis. When Joseph died, Brigham Young said that he was in charge, but Joseph Smith's son and Emma said that Joseph Smith III was in charge. And so Brigham was claiming to be in charge, but also Emma and Joseph Smith III in the reorganized church were claiming to be in charge. So the reorganized church said, all that polygamy stuff, that was Brigham Young. Joseph Smith never practiced it. So ironically, the Utah Brigham Young-based Mormon church rounded up the living wives of Joseph Smith and had them swear in sworn testimony that they were Joseph Smith's wives in very deed. So that information
is this where is it publicly available?
You can
information?
You could read Rough Stone Rolling, which is a biography sold by Deseret Book by the church's leading Joseph Smith historian, Richard Bushman. In that book, Richard Bushman will acknowledge the numbers between 30 and 40.
Oh, okay. And how,
and
is
the
there a
Gospel
way
Topics essay.
that I could read the journals of the women?
Yeah, you just get the book In Sacred Loneliness.
Okay. And
And
who is that written by?
Todd Compton. And there's a Mormon Stories episode. One of
Okay.
my very first Mormon Stories episodes was with Todd Compton, the author of In Sacred Loneliness.